Today we have a very special guest for our fireside chat. We have a dear friend of mine by the name of Jay Evans. I'm excited for this one because we're going to learn a ton. Jay has been in the industry a long time. He is a old school cultivator and innovator, has monstrous depth of knowledge that we're about to share. So a lot of times people don't spend the whole time here. This one you're going to want to because there is a monstrous amount of knowledge coming down. Are you there, Jay?
Yo.
Hey, there he is.
Hey.
Fantastic. Always
Sorry.
a little technical difficulties. It wouldn't be a Tuesday if we didn't have a couple things to figure out. For those that don't know, this is Jay Evans from Twister. Thank you for joining us today. Jay is a expert in the field. He is one of the founders, I believe, or an owner of Twister Trimmer. You're going to learn a shit ton of stuff. So let's start with why the name Twister?
Twister. So I started growing in like 1995. I think I grew my first plant. Fast forward, started growing commercially like in the early 2000s. And then we had to hire a lot of people to trim. So we brought, I don't know, 20, 30, 40, sometimes 50 people to trim. And obviously back then it wasn't something you could do easily. And so we would make people wear sunglasses with duct tape on the inside of them. And we'd load them into vans and we would drive to the facility. And on the way there, we would do some donuts and circles and confuse people at where they were going. And so one day, one of the girls started calling us twisters for getting them all twisted around on the trip to the facility. Well, eventually we had to invent or make a trimming machine because the labor portion of the trimming was so high for us and the risk was so high. And so when we decided to name the machine, one of the girls said we should name it Twisters because that's what they all called us. They all called us Twisters for getting them twisted around. So
you've been in the space obviously a very long time, and today you get to see a ton of gardens globally. Where do you personally see cannabis going globally?
Yeah, it depends. Like I think we visit probably on a bad year 150 facilities and a good year 300 facilities. So lately we spent a lot of time in Europe and the rest of the world. Like the US is the biggest market, there's no question, but the US market is kind of its own little ecosystem, whereas the rest of the world seems to work quite cooperatively together. Obviously US laws prohibit them. So it depends. Like in you look at places like Europe and Canada, GMP, like regulations are a big thing. So it's very strict, it's pharmaceutical. Whereas in the US, you can walk into a facility, wearing your street clothes and no gloves and no hairnet, no PPE, and touch things if you want. So I think that's going to probably change in the US as they get moved towards legalization. I don't think you can do that forever. Maybe you can. Maybe they'll treat it like egg, but that's the biggest difference I see in the two regions. It's equality. I think everyone's chasing the quality now. Like Canada's quality is quite good. California's quality. There's good quality everywhere. You just got to find it. But traditionally, like I think, or consistently, the best quality is coming out of. There's some good quality coming to Canada, good quality coming out of the U.S., California. Some of the Washington states got some good quality. So yeah.
But we'll start with cultivating. What goes into cultivating high quality cannabis?
Oh yeah, there's so many things. I think most people can grow good weed now for the most part. Like I think it's pretty consistent. People are growing good weed. New things, obviously, under canopy lighting's become really big lately. That's a pretty good return on investment. Like I think it's probably the best bang for your buck out there right now.
I agree.
Yeah. You see it. You can tell in the sales. Like the companies that are selling under canopy lights are doing very well right now. I think once everyone gets retrofitted or outfitted with those, it's going to be on to the next thing. I think a lot of people make mistakes in environmental control. So I think people underestimate how important that is. And so if you're a home grower, it's obviously challenging to keep your environment really consistent. Even the big facilities, same thing. Like large greenhouses, they have a hard time. And so I think that's why the craft guys are going to have such an advantage on the quality side because they can control that environment so well. And if you can control the environment perfect, like the graphs don't go up and down, you do so much better. Like your chances of winning are so much higher.
In smaller spaces, obviously, craft cultivators have a smaller garden, and you're dealing with less microclimates than a large space, right? So, and especially with heat and regen units, the humidity and the spikes,
the hot gas reheats.
The hot gas reheats, yeah, they're starting to become more popular, and it's a real opportunity to really dial in your humidity swings and temperature swings.
If you look at a graph from a facility that's running like a split unit AC, and then they're running a dehumidifier. It's all over the place, right? Because the AC is cooling, the dehum turns on or the dehum turns on to pull the air or pull the moisture out, then it heats the room. Then AC's got to kick on, and they're chasing each other. They're always fighting, and so the room's never consistent. Whereas if you get these multi-stage modulating ACs and dehumidifiers, especially with the hot gas reheat, the graph is like perfect. And if you get perfect graph like that, yeah, your chances of winning go way up. But it's funny because most people won't spend the money on it, but it pays for itself so fast, right? It's 2 or 3 times the price of a standard unit, but the guys that are switching over are doing really well.
Yeah, I mean, listen, there's still guys that are using exhaust to deal with temperature and humidity. It's
those guys are toast.
Those that industry, that part of the industry, you're just, it's fine for one light, but sure. Large scale, everything comes down to environment, and when it comes to lighting and environment, there's no areas to cut corners. Like when it comes to trimming on large scale, it's very difficult to bring a monstrous crew of people in. Your product has a value. How much percentage do you think having a trimming machine consumes versus hand trim?
You mean in yield or waste?
In waste. Not that it's waste because everything gets used.
Yeah. Certainly, anytime you go to automation, there's some trade-off, right? So you can't. Well, I shouldn't say that. I think true innovation is when there is no trade-offs. Right now, there is a trade-off with most automation, and like a trimming machine. If you were to dry trim flower by hand, an average for indoor flower, say you had 100 pounds or 10, use 10 pounds. You have 10 pounds, sure. You're going to end up with 8 pounds of trim flower, 2 pounds of trim, right? So it's 80-20. Call it like an 80% yield. When you start using automation, and especially if you don't know what you're doing, you can drop that yield down to, I've seen it as low as 50%, which is really bad, right? Like you would never want that. And so really, though, if you're good, you can get it around 70%. So you're going to lose 10% of your flower to trim by going to automation. But in the last year, we've developed ways of getting that yield higher. So we can get up to 75%, 76%, like almost lose no yield or lose very little yield. And the quality goes way up as well. It's the equipment is probably half of the success. The other half is the process you have. And so most people buy equipment and they think it's going to work. Like it's like you have an excavator. It's like you buying our tractor. It's like someone sells you a tractor, but you still have to learn how to use it. And so there's that stage that people, when we failed at this, to be honest, for like 10 years, we failed at teaching people how to use our equipment, mainly because of the laws and the rules. And so for the first 10 years, we couldn't even advertise that our equipment was used for cannabis. Like we didn't, even until recently, until like 2019, we couldn't talk about what it was used for. If you went to our website, you would have no idea what this machine was. You'd have to know someone to know. And so, yeah, hops, or exactly. Yeah. Mainly because our equipment was being seized by the government. So every time we'd ship something, the government would seize it. So we had to be very, very very strict on our marketing. And so with that, we weren't able to teach people how to use it properly. We just couldn't. We'd have to do it one at a time. And we failed at that. And so people started using the machines incorrectly. And they'd buy a machine and then put people who are very new to the industry on it and expect them to know how to do it. And they would fail. So we spent a lot of time in the last 3 or 4 years educating people how to do it. Like I said, there's trade-offs to everything. And so with automation, there's going to be some trade-off. And the yield is one, and the other one is the visual appeal. Like you can get some scarring on the flower. There's no question. And so now we really recommend people hand trim all their tops. If you're a premium producer, or you really care about the aesthetics of your flower, then you should hand trim the tops. The bottoms, the smalls, I don't think there's any need to do that by hand. It's just too time consuming.
Yeah, there's definitely a trade-off for sure.
Yeah. And then lab testing, potency was a big thing people complained a lot about. They're saying, oh, the machines kill your potency, but we've done hundreds of tests, and it's really hard to detect a potency loss in an automated trimmed flower. It's like plus or minus all the time. Like it barely picks it up. So it's really an aesthetic thing, really.
How are you getting your yields to 75%? What are you doing to achieve that versus only taking like a 4 or 5% loss?
Yeah, some things are like sorting, like pre-sorting the flower first. So like sorting size. So you're only trimming certain sizes with other sizes. That makes a big difference. The other is obviously a big one is hand trimming all your tops. Mm-hmm. But if you're a large facility and you have no option other than use automation, there's a fairly large amount of facilities out there that they just have to use automation. What we're doing now is we developed a machine. It's an AI grading machine. It's a sorting machine that uses cameras similar to not the same, but similar to what they use in, say, blueberries or nuts or potato chips, or it's used in many industries, but there's no similar device in cannabis. And we tried to bring them in from other industries, but we failed because cannabis is so nuanced. Like the shape of the flower is so different than any other product. The requirements, the
It
pickiness of
varies.
what people, yeah, and what people want, the color, the foxtail, the crow's feet, the stems, the leaf, like all these things are so, like a blueberry is blue and it's round, right? And that's it. So it's easy to sort those out. And so we had to develop something ourselves. It took us about 5 years. It's finally commercialized and we're selling it around the world right now. And what it'll do is you'll run the flower through so when you run the flower through a trimming machine, say you run it through a machine and it takes 2 minutes to go through the machine, or let's use 1 minute as a good example. It takes 1 minute to go through the machine. Well, within 10 seconds of in that machine, flower has already been trimmed enough. Like it's good. But what happens is it has to spend the rest of the time in there being essentially over trimmed. And so what this machine does is it'll skim off the good flower, and then you trim the flower some more. And then it'll skim off the flower as it's done again, and you'll trim some more. So you're constantly skimming off the good stuff as it's being finished and not being over trimmed. And what we'll try to do is we're trying to skim off the stuff so we don't expect the machines to do a perfect job anymore. Like people expected that for a while, but what we want now is we want the flower to come out where it only needs 1 or 2 touches. So like someone just has to grab it and maybe snip off a crow's foot or something.
Yeah.
And so that drastically reduces labor, but you still get quality high, you still get high yields. You kind of get the best of all worlds.
That makes a ton of sense. Makes a ton of
But
sense.
it's expensive. It's expensive though. Like the machine,
That's Marvel. Pardon?
Yeah, Marvel. Yeah. Yeah, the equipment to do that isn't cheap, so it's not for everyone.
Yeah, that would be. I mean, we're talking about trimmers that do up to 100 pounds an hour
Or more. Yeah.
or more, and Marvel is now able to use AI to remove molds, pathogens, problematic flowers, stuff that doesn't look good,
Or sort by color.
or sort by color. Crazy tech.
Yeah. It's if your eye can see it, Marvel can see it, and then it'll detect it, and then as it falls through an array of cameras, the cameras will detect what's wrong with it. It'll think about and then puff it out or shoot it out with a puff of air. And so you can shoot it out into 4 different streams. So you could have one stream of flower that's too leafy, one stream of flower that has maybe it's too small, one stream of flower that might have powdery mildew on it. If you're a greenhouse, that becomes common in the summers at most greenhouses. And then one stream is like perfect flower, and so you don't have to touch that.
I mean, it's a hell of a way of guaranteeing quality control. I mean, I assume it's expensive. What are you looking at for Marvel?
So it's hardware as a service. So we don't actually sell the equipment because we're constantly upgrading it. So people who have an original version have been upgraded to the next version, and because the algorithms constantly have to be worked on, we're constantly pushing new information to it. So we're always seeing new things. We probably evaluated. We have millions of flower, like individual flower that have gone through it that we've had to train on, and so. Right now, the price, it ranges anywhere from $4,000 a month to $25,000 a month, depending on how much you are processing. So you think about it, it's like $4,000 a month is the cost of one person typically. Like, and by no means are we trying to. Yeah, well, we're not trying to. What most facilities, we're not really replacing labor. People think, oh, you're automating things, you're automating out these jobs, but most of these companies are moving those people into higher value places. Like they're still understaffed in other places, so they just move people over into something that's more useful. As opposed to like going through and looking at flower every day.
Back in the day when we'd have trimming parties and you'd have, 15 guys in a room, all of us used to say anybody who designs and automates a full trimming machine is going to be rich, right? Like, and then the first trimmer that I recall was the Big Red Shredder. And that was,
it was like a drill bit in a pipe.
A drill bit with a vacuum cleaner. And that was, I would love to find one of those, by the way, just for nostalgia's sake. What are the benefits of doing wet trim versus dry trim?
Yeah, for a long time, when we first came on the scene, back in 2007, wet trimming was what the machine was designed for. And that's what we were doing. We were in BC, we were moving, as you said, it was fast, it was easy. And then around 2014, dry trimming became like more of a standard. It always was a standard. It was the better way of doing it, but just wet trimming became a way that I think people felt was faster and better for speed. It wasn't necessarily better for the quality of the flower. And it took a long time for us to adapt to dry trimming, and probably longer than longer than it should have. And then
what's your favorite?
Oh, dry trimming by far. There's no question. Like wet trimming is, if you go into new markets, they're still doing it. I think because they fell in the same trap. There's this something about, they think it's easier or better, but it makes a mess. It's super sticky. It bruises the flower. So what happens when you cut a wet plant, you cut the leaf, it will literally bleed a little bit of liquid, right? And that liquid is a VOC. It's called hexanol, and that hexanol gives off this smell of cut grass. So it's when you it's the same smell as when you go to a golf course and they freshly mow the lawn, or you mow your grass at your house. It has this cut grass smell. Weed gives off the same smell when you cut it, and so that smell is in the flower for days, weeks after you dry it. And so you can get that smell out sometimes if you have a good dry cure process, but for the most part, it's there, right? And then the other part is the trichomes are sticky. And so unless the only time wet trimming actually is somewhat effective is if you can do it in a really cold room, usually at like 4 to 6 Celsius, which most people can't do. And you use water as a lubricant. So you spray the machine with water. And so ice water. And so everything's cold, cold, cold. And then what happens to the trichomes, they get stiff. They don't break. They don't get, if it's too cold, they'll break off and snap. But they get stiff and they don't get sticky. And so basically the trichomes will stay on the plant really well. We built out facilities like that where they went into a pre-cool cooling room, and then it went into another room, and then another room. And so it was all these stages to ensure you could wet trim. But in the end, dry trimmings, the good thing about wet trimming though is you get a higher yield. You'll get a higher, that 80% that I was talking about earlier, that drops down to say 70 or 60 with automation. You can get a higher yield with wet trimming. And I think that's probably part of the reason a lot of people did it. Because you can really fuck your flower up quickly if you throw it in if you throw dry flower into a dry trimmer and you don't know what you're doing, you can just munch it fast. And so that's probably another reason. But yeah, in general, I don't recommend wet trimming to anyone at all, unless you're doing it yourself and you're literally hand cutting off everything perfectly on the stem and you're hanging it. Then maybe, but other than that, it's scissors get too sticky.
You're still ending up with that fresh grass cut smell, and you can pick up on those.
There's no question.
I agree with you 100% on that. That brings us to our next topic, obviously curing. How important is curing in your opinion?
Well, it's important enough that we've like put 3 years or 4 years or 5 years of effort into it. I was saying to someone recently, like, and I think I shared with a few people, is I didn't believe in curing at all. We didn't think it was necessary. We heard about it, right? We heard about it for years, and everyone's curing. And guys in Northern California who had this really craft flower is like curing it. And our flower just sold so fast, we never had to do it. But around 2018, a friend of mine, he had really nice flower, and we had the same system, same environment, same lighting, same everything, same genetics, but his flower is just better. And so I went over there one day trying to see what he was doing, and he had, because we actually have a facility where we grow it. It's like a block from here. And so he wouldn't tell me what it was, but he had all these totes, and he had all these totes half open. And then finally I figured out he was burping these totes. And I asked him how long he's been doing it for. And he said, well, it's this old guy. He finally told me. He's like, this old guy showed me how to do it. I basically just open these totes every day. I monitored the hygrometer. I open these totes like 4 or 5 times a day. And his flower just got so sticky and it smelled so good. And so ours smelled good. It didn't have the same stick to it. It didn't have the same texture to it. It's almost like crumbly. And ours smelled good for the first 2 weeks, but his smelled good like weeks later. And wasn't a big deal to us at the time because, again, our flower was gone. But eventually we realized that this curing thing is definitely giving better quality. So we started playing around with how to do it, and we invented a bunch of ways of doing it, and got to the point where we went all in on what is now the CurePak. And it's been a bit of a journey. We've learned a lot. And I'll be the first to admit we don't know everything. I don't think anyone knows everything, but we've definitely done enough trial and error and experiments to get pretty far down the path to prove that it makes a difference in flower. And you can see, you go to any traveling a lot. Like, I'm super grateful to work or have Keirton in Twister, because I get to travel the world, and so I get to dispensaries all over, and I'll often go into a dispensary and buy the flower of the customer we're visiting and just see what it's like. And I'll buy a lot of flower just to compare. But it's super consistent. You get flower that crumbles, it's like over dried, or it's a little bit wet and it's got a bit of a musty smell to it. I think over dried is way more common. Too dry, and it's like it's crumbly and it's hard to roll. You kind of drying, and it all just falls out the rolly because it's just. And so it was obvious to us that there was a problem that everyone was having, or not everyone, but the majority of the industry. And so we've efforted to automate it and make it a straightforward process for people.
Necessity is always the mother of invention. So 100% believe in curing. I've been curing for a very, very long time. And to get curing right, yeah, to get curing right is an art. To know when, I know it's super important to take off probably 70% of the moisture the first 3 days of a plant. I like to get the water out of the plant very, very quickly. I also don't believe that 62 is the number. We had this discussion earlier. I think 58 is the number for proper cure.
You mean the finish of the flower?
The finish of the flower.
Agreed. Well, and I think that's the people got thrown off with the moisture packs. Like, so all the moisture pack companies are selling these 62s, and everyone was buying those. And if you look at the ASTM standards and a bunch of the regulatory bodies for cannabis, they'll say like 0.65 water activity is the bad zone, right? So anything below that is okay. And so people think, well, if I can get more moisture in it, I'll be fine.
Mhm.
But anytime we've had flower that's been over we've pushed for 0.60 or 0.62 water activity, especially 0.62, it'll get this off smell. And as soon as it gets exposed to too much heat, it'll sweat that water out, and then it'll condensate on the bag if it gets cooled again. And now you're into other problems. So you gotta stay below 58. Like 58, I think, is a sweet spot.
I would agree with you. And I think the smell and the nose, it's just a better capture of the final product.
No question.
And I think it holds up a lot better.
Well, your flower is great though. Your flower is, every time I've seen it, looks. But how much effort do you put into that?
A ton. So this will be the first time I've ever used a CurePak. You were gracious enough to give me one, and this will be the first time I get to use a CurePak and use automation for it, because putting it in totes and burping it effectively and spending the time and energy takes a ton of work. But a properly cured piece of cannabis, there's an art to growing, there's an art to doing cuttings, there's an art to finding genetics. There's so many. This is one of the things I love about this industry, is this industry, every chapter in this industry has a niche and an expert within the field, right? There's people that do cuttings, there's people that do genetics extremely well, and they geek out in that one area, right? And there's great cultivators that really geek out on cultivation and making sure the environment's perfect, and they're crop steering, and they're doing all the things that everyone else isn't doing.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's people that cure really, really well. And now that you've adopted a product to help the masses find a way of doing this, I think it was highly intelligent myself. I have one here, and for those that haven't seen it, but yeah, literally this is it in a nutshell. And this gets bolted onto a tote, a sealed vessel of any type. And do you want to kind of give us the lowdown of how this works?
Sorry, give you the rundown on it?
Yeah, do you want to give everybody the rundown, because it's your product? Do you want to give everybody the rundown on how this exactly works?
Yeah. So what it does is you're gonna, within a curing vessel or chamber, you're gonna load flour into it, and that flour is gonna give off moisture or take in moisture, right? Because it's gonna either be drier or more wet than the air. And so what'll happen typically, if you the biggest mistake most people make is they over dry their flour because they're worried about getting microbials. And if you over dry your flour, then curing is more or less a waste of time, because there's no moisture left in the flour to feed the enzymes, and there's no moisture left in the flour to stabilize or to bind that water in. And so one of the things that you'll notice is when you cure something, if you do it well, it'll have a texture where it squishes and kind of puffs back up. We say like a fresh marshmallow. It'll puff back up like a fresh marshmallow, and it should stick and hang off your finger, because the trichomes still have moisture left in them. There's the oil in there is still, they haven't been dried out like a grain of sand or like a deflated beach ball. And so if you dry to a point where you have just a little bit of moisture left in the flour, and so the way I like to describe it is the stems almost snap, like they're so close to snapping, and the leaves are a little bit crispy on the outside. That's usually a good indication that you're in the zone to start curing. You load the flour into a chamber, a bucket, or a barrel or a tote or whatever, ideally a sealed container. You put the CurePak in it, you drill a hole into the CurePak or into the container, or you actually screw it into a port on the barrel. Like we have some barrels down below that I could show you where you screw the CurePak into. And then it's going to monitor the headspace in that chamber. So it's going to monitor the air in there. And if the flour is a little bit moist, because if the stem isn't snapping, there's still moisture in there, it's going to give off that moisture into the air. And the CurePak's going to monitor that moisture. And then when it gets too high, it's going to burp that moisture off. It's also going to monitor other things like the CO2 levels. So we measure all these different gases. We measured ethylene and ammonia and CO2 and all sorts of things. And there's certainly ethylene being given off, and there's other gases being given off, but they're actually quite expensive to measure. But what gets given off a lot and in the most abundantly is CO2. And so the flour will give off CO2. We have someone right now who's curing down in California who's curing on the stalk, because that's the way they like to do it. And 3 weeks into their cure, they're still getting CO2 levels hitting 1,000 ppm. And so it takes a long time for those reactions to calm down. And so we measure the CO2. Now, if you cut the flour and your flour is really dry and you cut it off the stalk and you load it in, you might not get any CO2 action, but typically you'll get something. And so we'll measure the CO2, which is also an indicator. We know when the CO2 climbs, other gases are being given off as well because we've correlated them. And for the next, say, 3 days, 10 days, 20 days, whatever you think is important, you're going to monitor that environment. And the CurePak's going to monitor that environment. It's going to control it for you. And so what it should do is, if you'll set a water activity goal. So water activity is very similar to relative humidity. It's just relative humidity after it's been equalized for a period. So inside the chamber, after 24 hours, whatever the RH in that chamber is your water activity. So if it says 60% relative humidity, well, then your water activity is 0.60 water activity. And so if your flower is 0.60 water activity and your goal is to get it down to 0.58, then the CurePak will do that for you. It'll slowly burp moisture off. As the moisture inside the flower moves to the outside, it'll burp that moisture off. It'll bind that water into the flower. And so the water activity is a measurement of the free water that's available in that flower. And free water is bad. So free water is what goes and creates microbials. So you want to bind that. You either want to get rid of that water or you want to bind it into the flower, right? And so if you bind that water in the flower, that's great because you're going to get more flower weight if you're selling commercially, or if you're selling at all, you're going to want to have more flower weight, but you're not going to have so much water that it makes it burn bad or that it creates microbials. So there's this fine line, like you said, 58. If you can nail 58, you're going to have really nice flower, but most people don't. You go and measure most flower, it's like 52, 50, or it's too high, it's like 62. And that's why, like, the moisture packs, we've really been...
The moisture packs are really good as oops, I fucked up.
Yeah. Or if you're storing flour, like if you had a jar of flour and you're in a dry environment, and every time you open say you're in Arizona, every time you open your jar, you're letting in 40% RH air, well, then that's not great because the flour is just going to dry out. So if you're in that environment, a moisture pack in there is a smart thing. But I would suggest a 58 RH moisture pack, not a 62. And most people are using 62s, and I think that's too high. And that's why there's a lot of rumors there's rumors that the moisture packs kill your terpenes and this and that. Well, if you put too much moisture in there, yeah, it's going to mute the smell. Yeah, 58 is what we think is best. And that might change. Like, obviously, we're learning all the time. We used to say 60, so maybe we'll say 55 in a year.
You have to, in this industry, you have to be a cultivator. You have to be involved in the plant. How important is that for your R&D and staying relevant in the marketplace?
Well, for us, because we actually grow as well, it's the reason we're able to innovate things, because we know the problems people are experiencing. And so without that ability to grow, we would just be taking other people's advice on what's needed in the market. And I don't think we would create the best products. And so everything we create is because it's a problem we've had. So whether it's like sorting size or curing or trimming, some things we scale up beyond what we need. Like, say, for instance, our T0 trimmer, it's actually quite large. I should show you a video. It's like down there. It's a very big piece of equipment. And so that machine is obviously something that I don't necessarily need, but it's just a scaled up version of something we've already created. But yeah, the cultivation side is critical. That's how we learn what needs to be done.
Absolutely. It makes sure you stay relevant. Having your hands on the plant, having your hands understanding curing. I mean, I would never have tried a product like a CurePak. I definitely see the value in it, and I definitely see the value. If you haven't figured out the art of curing, it's necessary, because it honestly, it takes decades to get to a point where you're like, this is the best hash makers in the world. It takes a long time to find, the art of anything. They say that, and put 5,000 hours into anything and you'll become an expert. I would say it's longer than that with cannabis. It's crazy that there was an episode on Growing Exposed where it was a 6-1 Charlie episode, and they're like, we don't use CurePaks or any of the gel packs because we know exactly what to give for getting the exact proper cure.
Yeah, you shouldn't be using moisture packs for curing anyways. That's not what they're designed for. If you're using moisture packs for curing, you've made a mistake somewhere, or they definitely should not be used for curing. But for storage after, sure, there's an argument there, but definitely not curing.
But especially, like you said, if you're opening and closing that jar and it's 40% humidity out, no question, things are going to dry out. I know how important a properly cured flower is, because I don't want to cough up a lung. That whole adage of if you don't cough, you don't get off is a pile of shit. The truth of the matter is, coughing is not fun, especially as you get older.
Well, if you can cure well, then you don't need anything like a CurePak. Like, it's not for people who've nailed it every time. It's for me and the guys I work with who are busy and we make mistakes, and the system, like, you have new people that are working with you, or One example is that there was a time where my daughter was playing soccer, and I knew we had flour that was had a little bit too much moisture in it, and I had to get back to the facility because no one was around and burp this barrel. Like, fuck, it'd be nice if I just push a button and it just burped right now. And then that's one of the features we added in the CurePak. So there's these little things that happen to you that make you realize that you're busy and life's moving fast and you don't have time to sit there and open a container. And that's when I first met, when I first saw my friend doing it. He's opened the container 5 times a day. I'm like, how do you do this so much every day? And I'm like, I don't know if it's necessary. And he didn't even know if it was necessary. I'm like, why are you doing it so many times? He's like, well, I don't know. That's what the guy told me.
And the puck itself. I mean, listen, it's also a tool to standardize a product.
Well, that's a big thing for sure. Yeah.
And I think standardization is key when it comes to making anything commercial. As we've said 1,000 times, you can spend months growing the best product possible, and I truly believe you can fuck it up royally if you don't know what you're doing when it comes to drying and curing.
Well, that's where most people fuck it up. It's like super common. Like every facility, not every, I shouldn't say that, but a lot of facilities I go to, they put the least amount of thought and effort into the post harvest. Like they don't even, like the dry room's too small. It's undersized everything. The people who are managing it are the least experienced. It's like, it's the part that is just an afterthought. And unfortunately, it's where a lot of the quality gets degraded the most. Or you can improve it the most. Like there's a huge opportunity to improve the quality in that stage. And so yeah, that's why we focus there right now. It's the one area that we see a lot of opportunity to improve flour and help people. Is the area we needed the most help. I would say drying is the next frontier. Like there is some good technology out there for drying, but no one's really put the effort into controlling that technology in a way that gives you really good results. And so and one of the reasons why for CurePak we offer 60-day guarantee. Like if you don't like it, just give it back to us. But I can almost guarantee that you're going to learn something through using it. You'll learn something about how you messed up your dry. You'll learn about how to improve your dry. You'll learn about just water activity in general, what certain water activity feels like, how the flour should feel at that water activity. There's a lot that people can learn just from using the product. And if they don't, then yeah, give it back. We'll give you your money back.
Typically it's 60 and 60% humidity, 60 degrees in a dry cure room or in a drying room. We shouldn't be using temperature. It shouldn't be 60 and 60. It should be monitored via VPD, correct?
That's what we think now. I think it's the better way of doing it. It's taken us some time to come around to that. And we're not using VPD. We get there's been a few people who've called us out saying you're not using VPD correctly. And maybe in the traditional sense we aren't, but we're certainly using vapor pressure deficit to measure or monitor the exchange of air in the chamber. And so I think it should be used in dry rooms as well. It is definitely something that we're getting much more experience with, but I think it's the better way of doing it personally. Because the main reason is temperature and humidity they affect each other quite a bit, right? And the nice thing about VPD is at least it compensates for that temperature change. And so if you had a jar, like here's a jar here, and as this jar heats up, it's going to give off, the air is going to hold more moisture. The vapor pressure is going to change between the flour and the partial pressure in the chamber. So that flour is going to give off moisture into the air, right? That air is going to hold more moisture, it's okay. It's going to spike the moisture in the chamber for a while, and then it's going to equalize and then come back down, usually below the number that it originally started at. And so that's fine. That's okay. But then as soon as the CurePak is going to monitor that though and see, the vapor or the water spiked in here. We have to burp that off because it's spiking above our threshold. So it's burped that water off. But then the problem is when it comes back to equilibrium, you've burped off too much water. And once the cell lets that water out, it doesn't go back into the cell very well. Like you can't rehydrate the trichome head. You can't rehydrate like the green vegetative material. You can rehydrate it, but you'll never rehydrate it the same way. It's just the consistency changes. Like it's super obvious. I can tell flour that's been like rehydrated versus flour that's been cured properly just by the way it compresses and puffs back up. And so VPD compensates for that temperature change. And so we've had people recently who are in their house and they have 10-degree swings in temperature and 10% swings in humidity, and we were able to nail their cure perfectly because the VPD compensated for all that. The VPD control compensated for all that. And so that's fairly new. Like we've been, I'd say in the last year, maybe 6 months, we've been really playing with that. There's other ways of measuring dew point and wet bulb, and there's other things you can use, but VPD for us has been the best, no question.
What's next for Twister?
Well, we're going to really keep pushing on curing. The sorting and grading Marvel, it's that machine. Maybe I'll take you down there and you can see it. This is where we build or we test everything. So there's we have a wall of CurePucks there. I don't know if you can see that or not, but that's where we have a lot of curing trials are happening there all the time. So we bring flower here, do trials. It has we call it command center. It's this curing dashboard, a screen above that shows you what's happening in every chamber, so you know what's happening. So say you had a big facility, we have customers who have hundreds of these barrels, and so they need to monitor them all. And they want to be able to produce consistent flower that's the same water activity. So they use it that command center. T0, that's that large trimmer that goes into Marvel. So when you say what's next, it's basically the system, or creating a system that allows you to get the highest yield and the highest quality. And so I said before, when you use a trimming machine, you'll lose quality, or sorry, you'll lose yield through a trimming machine. But when you add something like Marvel, it skims off the flour that's been already trimmed well and then runs it back to the system. So it's this. So essentially, it's changing the way people do things, which is going to be very hard because there's a certain way people do things in the industry that they're kind of stuck on. But it's re-teaching people a new way of doing it that's better. It's like a paradigm shift in how you think about it.
It's the story of my life, Jay. Is why fix something if it's not broken, right?
Right.
But there's technology and people that work their asses off to find innovative new technologies that can genuinely yield more and do things better. But unfortunately, in this industry, there's so much of an ego play, right? That
no question.
It's crazy, and sometimes you just have to get out of your own way to succeed, right? I remember decades ago, I walked into Amsterdam and I was like, carbon filters? We use ozone. There's no way carbon filters are going to work. And I remember that being a thing, a paradigm shift, that I'm always open to new concepts and new ideas. There's a lot of people that are out there doing things more effectively. And as a nutrient manufacturer, we're always pushing the boundaries of, will this yield more? Will this do more? We do the testing all the time. It doesn't stop, right? When it comes to formulating a product, any product, we have chemists on staff formulating all the time. You yourself, you have scientists, you have technology, you have people doing things to push the boundaries of what this plant's capable of. And, this is your niche. And, Marvel is something to marvel at. It's really, really cool. And you're not trying to replace a human being. I don't view it that at all. Human beings make mistakes where you might have powdery mildew and you might not see it, but Marvel will pick that up.
Yeah, no question. Yeah.
And I like that. I think that's great.
Well, and I'm the first to admit, like, the stuff we make isn't for everyone. Like, there's a certain consumer or producer that sees value in the things we make, and those are the ones we want to work with. And if you don't, like, there's no question, like, some of the best cannabis I've seen has been produced by people who do everything by hand, right? Everything by hand, the highest quality. But that's just, and it's great. They're doing well. And so they have that niche and they're doing well, but they have a hard time scaling that. And so those guys, we love working with them, like, especially the CurePucks, like that. The thing that's nice about those guys is they like the CurePucks because it helps them improve their quality even more. It takes away some of the guesswork. And so it's beautiful because we get to work with those guys too, who are super craft niche. And then all the way up to the guys who are doing 3,000 kgs a week, like, just crazy amounts. And so it's just, yeah.
I always wonder who the hell's smoking all this weed, but that's just me. I mean, when you see one of the T0s going, it's pumping out a river of weed.
Yeah.
Like, some of these facilities are just nonstop. I mean, it's when you see the pre-roll machines going, 6, 7 pre-roll machines, it's like, holy shit, Anyways, I'm still dumbfounded by how this industry is evolving.
Some have great quality and some have not so great quality, but there's something for everyone. So, like, we get often people will complain, like, oh, that's a boof machine, or that's this or that. And, like, yeah, well, it's not for you then. Like, the funny thing is, most people don't smoke the best weed there is. They're consuming something kind of middle of the pack or even on the cheaper side day to day. And so, like, to create that flower that's a little bit more cost effective or price point sensitive, you need to automate it. And so,
I mean, listen, we had this discussion earlier. When it comes to haters in life, there's always going to be them. I tend not to read the comments. It's not that I don't care. I always want to hear critical facts about everything, and I want to hear input all the time about products, because I think growers, if you listen, can be the best sounding wall of good advice. And having the retail stores really, really helps with that. So having the pulse on the industry, when someone has just, something negative to say like, oh, fuck trimmers. Trimming machines are bullshit. Well, trimming machines have their place, especially like you alluded to, trim the big stuff by hand, throw the rest through the trimming machine. Because time is too valuable, and having a effective trimming machine that does the job well in the right environment, I very much see the value. How accurate is the microbial growth risk, and what is it based on?
So yeah, microbials they typically need water to multiply and grow, and so anything, and this has been proven in food for forever, and so certain foods have to have a certain water activity, and so cannabis has a specific water activity where if you manage it below a certain number, microbials, the risk is low. And so the like ASTM standards and some kind of governing bodies have come out with some papers previously that said 0.65 water activity or 65% humidity is kind of the range where you start risking microbials. And so that I think is too high. And so the reason I think that is because we've done hundreds of tests and trials, and every time our flower is above 0.62, it gets a bit of a funk smell to it. And only if you're a broker or someone who smells a lot of weed, you'll smell it. The average person won't smell it. But if you're someone who smells a lot of weed, you'll know right away that there's something in there that's not right. The other challenge with 0.62 is, like I said earlier, as soon as you heat it up, it's going to give off all that moisture. And then if you cool it down quickly, it's going to sweat and condensate on the walls of that package, potentially, if there's enough flour in there. And then that's going to try and reabsorb back into the flour, which is fine as long as it reabsorbs properly. But the truth is, it doesn't always reabsorb properly. And so now you have this problem of like too much moisture in there. So really, if you want to be safe and you can still have very sticky weed. Like we'll have a bunch of jars here. We're always testing. We have flour that's 0.58 water activity, which is a high moisture level, but it's also low enough that you're not going to risk any microbials if you were to put the jar in the desert in the trunk of your car and let it get really hot. It's not going to, it'll spike the RH, but it'll come back down, but it won't get to a point where you're going to get funky things. Like 0.58 is as high as you go. So if you want to be really safe, 0.56 is where you should be. But I find 0.56 is a little bit too dry sometimes. And it's also the dense flour will need a slightly lower number. We find that even in drying, if we don't pull all the moisture in the first day, like really pull hard on the moisture in the first day, we'll start getting a little bit of like tiny, you can barely see a little bit of browning around the stems of the flour. And that browning is just not a good sign. So we just like pull as hard as we can on the moisture first day, second day, and then we taper it off.
Really quickly, I just want to say your videos, by the way, for those that haven't followed Twister Trimmer, you really should do yourself a service and look at Jay's videos. Your videos, by the way, have really come a long way in regards to tortillas and bound water and getting into all these little details. I think they're excellent.
I don't like doing them, to be honest. Yeah, I don't like doing them, to be honest. But it's I don't like doing them. I don't like being on camera. I'm just so used to being like kind of in the background. But
none of us did. But it's necessary. You know, who's going to be the voice of your company other than you, the owner? Who's going to do the research? Who's going to do the homework? Who's going to put the money up to do all those testing?
Yeah, right? I think part of it totally. When I'm sitting there on Sunday morning thinking about how to solve this problem, I guess it makes sense that I share that with people once you. And for a long time, I had this bad mentality where it's like, oh, I've put all my effort into learning this. I'm not sharing with anyone. But that was just such a shitty way of looking at things. And now as soon as I learn something, I want to share it with people, and hopefully they benefit from it.
Absolutely. Like, rising tides raise all ships. And I'm a firm believer in that. So, part of growing exposed was I wasn't happy with the information that the internet had. I'm in an interesting predicament where I get to see a lot of gardens and I get to see a lot of people in this industry. It's my job. I'm not an actor. I'm just one of the owners and one of the people within this industry.
Me, but I heard you say a rising tide raises all ships. And
so yeah, rising tides raise all ships. Anyways, why would you sort by color if it's all the same genetic?
Oh, good reason. Lots of genetics, when they're lower canopy flower, they often will be like a limey green color. Like say you're something that's supposed to be really purple and like the lower flowers are lime green or different color, underdeveloped, just because they're deeper in the canopy. That's becoming less common now with under canopy lights, but places like greenhouses or outdoor that don't have the penetration of the light, they want to skim off all the good, dark, like really well-developed flower, and everything that's been a little bit underdeveloped, that'll go into a separate stream.
What's the difference between curing and drying?
So drying is like pulling the bulk of the moisture out. So you're pulling the mass of the moisture out, and then curing is kind of like, it's like the fine tuning of it. It's like the if you look in a dry room, the grass in a dry room of most dry rooms is so erratic that it's hard to land that flower on a perfect water activity. And so, and it's also hard to bind the water in there. So they are two different distinct stages. And so you can just dry and be done, package your flower and move on. But you're going to find, especially if you have big flower and small flower, and especially if you try and move the dry along faster, then the big flower will have more moisture than the small flower, and then you'll just have these inconsistencies. So curing will help homogenize the flower. It'll help. There's many things. It'll help the smell, aroma, the texture, the stickiness. There's a lot of value in curing. It's kind of like, I guess the best way of just looking at it is it's the way they would age wine or whiskey in barrels. So you're kind of doing something a little bit similar, right? Mm-hmm. It's like, yeah, there's this process that happens, and there's this next stage that's just like you're fine tuning it.
It's where all the magic happens. And that last little bit is really, if you over dry cannabis, yeah, you'll still get high. It'll taste like shit. You'll cough. You may as well just consume. You just don't get the aroma, the flavor, the art, all the beauty that comes with it.
Something we discovered recently, and we're trying to prove this with more like real evidence, but we noticed that if we over dry flower, the terpenes that are given off to your nose, what you can smell, are usually really strong versus flower that's been cured. And so you'd automatically think, well, curing gives you a shittier nose. It's not as good. But where you notice the difference is in 3 or 4 weeks from then, and then you take that same flower and you open the jar, and the one that's been over dried will still have this pretty good smell. The one that's been cured will have often a sweeter, different smell, not as strong. But when you grind those up, that's where the difference happens. It's like the flour that's given off by the cured flour that's been ground is way better than the one that's been over dried. And like we've seen it through microscopes where you can look at flour that's been over dried. Picture a beach ball. When you the trichome's a beach ball. When you over dry it, it just shrinks down into this little like raisin, right? Where if you cure it well, it'll still shrink, but not as bad. And it hasn't given off all the terpenes that are contained in it. And so if you can protect it with some moisture, then when you actually go to consume it, it's way better quality. And so, like, these are all things that we've seen with microscopes, we've experienced, but we're trying to prove it with testing. The challenging with like terpene testing is not quite accurate enough. There's other things that are in there. There's these other sulfurs and there's just other compounds that aren't measured very well. And plus, like the terpene testing that's out there it's okay, but it's not great. And so it's kind of difficult to do, but it's something that I think we can prove in the next probably 3 months.
I'm certain of it already because a properly cured flower, you're right. When it's over dried, it basically just releases everything. All the cannabinoids will still stick around. You'll still get high. The experience for me is so much more valuable when you're getting the terps and the juiciness of the flower that translate. So
when you can't get that smell, like that sweetness. There's something that happens, and like we don't have enough proof on this yet, but there's a lot of evidence that there's enzymatic activity happening that's being fed by the oxygen and the water in there. They break down the starches, the chlorophylls in the flower. They give off this gas, which we can measure. We can measure these gases. And so there is a point though when the gases stop being given off, you should probably stop curing and reduce the oxygen, because the oxygen is what's going to oxidize it, right? And that's where you're going to start getting flour that looks like shit and smells bad, and it's not nice. And so limiting that oxygen at a certain point is actually also really important.
What parameters would be best to dry flour while minimizing azotopic evaporation of terpenes. Monoterpenoids.
Like cold is better, right? Yeah. And so the challenge with most systems is when you try and dry in a really cold environment, the dehumidifiers often freeze up, it just doesn't work well. So you can't pull a lot of moisture out of there. That's why these hot gas reheat systems are really good, because they can pull crazy moisture in a cold environment. Yeah. And so anything like if you can, 60 is actually a good temperature to be around. Anything below that, I can't say if it's good or bad. I know in curing, anything below that's not good, mainly because enzymes stop working when it's cold. Like when we cool a container down beyond a certain temperature, usually below 60, like 55, the gas being given off almost stops. And so like, you can tell the enzymatic activity stopped. And then there's also a temperature that's too high. Like, so if you were to stay in a range between 60 and say 73, if you stay in there, you're pretty safe. The lower you get down to 60, typically the better. But as you get to the curing stage, so in the early stage of drying, cold is good. But as you get to the curing stage, we like to raise the temperature up, because at some point that flour is going to be in room temperature, right? And so you don't want to all of a sudden just expose it to room temperature. And so we try and bring that temperature up and do the curing in that temperature. And we find that the gas is being given off, the activity is much faster. But too high, you're going to burn off too much terpenes. So like, yeah, 73 was where I would definitely max out.
Correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, I would rather be warmer if my dehumidification is not working as well to take off the first 2-3 days of moisture.
Yeah, because the warmer the air will hold more moisture. The flower will the vapor pressure deficit will allow the flower to push more moisture into that air. Yeah.
So I think, especially the first couple days, it's okay to be slightly warmer than 60 just to get the moisture off.
Yeah, so we usually we'll set the dehumidifier for as low, like we'll set it down to 40. And like it doesn't usually get down to 40 in that room but it pulls really hard. And then we'll set the temperature for usually 60, 65. 65 is as high as we go in temperature, because we find if it's at 65, we can get more moisture out of the room.
Can you lock moisture in the flower while the parameters are not on during curing?
I'm not sure I understand that. Can you lock moisture in the flower with parameters?
Can you still lock?
Can you still lock moisture in I think the answer is the parameters are imperative to ensure a proper cure. Environment's everything.
Well, like one way you can lock moisture in is you just hold that moisture in a container. Let's just say the moisture is 60% RH in that chamber. If you just leave it in that chamber for a long time, that water is going to bind in there just by the sake that it's in that moisture, that environment for a while, right? So we do this test quite often with tortillas, where we'll take a really dry tortilla and a tortilla that's been cured. The difference is really obvious. That it is, the longer you do this for, the more obvious it gets. The tortillas that have been cured in that environment for a long time, they're not brittle. They have moisture bound in them. And so the key is doing this process over a period. So if you can do it for, typically, the minimum I've seen it work well is 5 days. We try to say 10 days where we see pretty consistent results. 10 days where the water is bound into that flower quite well. And the way you can tell water is bound into a flower, an easy way, well, it's not an easy way, but one way, is if you were to take flour that has water bound in it and you put it on the counter in a really dry environment, it will resist giving off that moisture. Where if you took flour that wasn't cured with bound water and put it on the same counter in a dry environment, say you're in Arizona, the flour that wasn't cured well will just give off that moisture so fast. Same as like freshly dried flour. It's so hygroscopic. It'll give off and take moisture quite rapidly. But the flour that's been cured well will resist that longer, and so you'll get flour that's it has better shelf life, basically.
Makes sense. What's better to measure moisture content left in the stems and flowers, a hygrometer or a moisture meter?
So the standard for a long time in most cannabis facilities was a moisture analyzer, which that's where you would take the flour, you grind it up, you put it on a little tin tray, it basically vaporizes all the moisture out of it, and it would weigh the ash. Essentially, that's how you do it. Those are expensive and really not very accurate.
They're not accurate. I was about to say that. They're not accurate at all. And they're expensive. I've played with one before. They're shockingly not accurate.
Yeah, so we have a couple here, and we play with them quite a bit. And there's different standards you can have for them. There's different, depending on how much you grind the flour, it matters. It depends on, there's so many things that affect if the water's bound in the flour or not, if it's been cured or not. So what the best way, in our opinion, is, and there's people we used to recommend using these wood meters, where it's 2 metal probes that use like a impedance to measure the electrical conductivity of the flour. Those are okay, they give you a ballpark, but they're kind of pokey, and we apologize for recommending that forever. The best way really is just a good hygrometer, like a really high quality hygrometer. You spend $100 at minimum, probably. Get one that's plus or minus 1%. Not plus or minus 3 or 4% like most of them. We used to use sensor pushes, those little teal blue things you throw in a bag and have an app for it. Those are plus or minus 4%. So you think that's an 8% range. So that's way too far. You need to be really accurate in this. And so get a hygrometer that's plus or minus 1%. It's probably gonna cost you $100 at least. Put that into, take your flour, put your flour into a bag, throw the hygrometer in that bag, seal it up, and let it sit for a minimum of an hour. The technical standard is 24 hours. But let it sit for a minimum of an hour and see what it stabilizes in there at. That'll give you a water activity number. That'll give you an RH number. And so if it says 60% RH, your flower is 0.6 water activity. Technically, again, you're supposed to go 24 hours, but we've seen really good results in 20 minutes. You can see a pretty good standard, or it depends on how big the chamber is too, but that flower and that air will equalize quite quickly.
Yeah, that's good advice. I would agree. I think that's probably the best way of measuring the moisture in a flower.
Yeah. And that's why the CurePak is great for it, because it's got really high accuracy sensors on it, and it's designed to do that. So
yeah, I was about to say that. Literally, this is plus or minus 1.
1, yeah.
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 So just put a CurePak on it. Put your flower in a jar with a CurePak on it, and you'll definitely know where you're at. Can you show the CurePak wall behind you? I was actually really fascinated by the computer that monitors all these pucks. Do they need a wire going to it, or it does all wirelessly?
So these barrels, I'll walk you through it quickly here. These barrels here, they're all blue. These are for GMP facilities, so pharmaceutical. Mainly a few facilities in Canada, but Europe is the standard, like some sort of plastic barrel or stainless. Plastic's usually cheaper. There is a wire that has to go to every puck. That just keeps them charged. So it will work off of a battery for a period, usually 12 to 24 hours, depending if it pumps during that time.
Yeah.
These are all on, so craft barrels are what I like the best. It's a craft PE lined barrel. So inside it's got a plastic lining. You can then line this with a drum liner, which is the best way of doing it. I like them because they are, I don't know, they look the closest to like a whiskey barrel to me. It just feels like a little more craft than say this blue or a black tote. Black and yellow totes are kind of very California, but they're cheap. They don't seal. And so this puck is on a roller, so every day you would give it like basically a half turn each way, just to make sure the flower in the bottom here gets a little bit exposed to air. Then we go over to the black and yellows, which are quite common. If for a home grower, people will often use these. They'll put a foam seal in here, and they'll use these trays, so you can put different genetics in there. Some people, I haven't heard, some people, everyone says that it's, not everyone, people say that it's going to, the smell is going to intertwine with each other. We haven't seen that. We like for the first day, yes, there's a bit of a cross contamination, but the second day it's usually gone. But if that's a concern, then you have to have separate containers. And then this is the Cure Center basically screen. So it tells you right now, I can see that all of these ones, the Room RH is great for all of these. These ones over here, this is probably one of our customers in California. And then anyone on the other side here, where it's yellow, that means it's a little bit too dry. So there's some flour in barrels right now that's at 54%. So that flour is going to be on the borderline of like crumbly. And then they have nothing that's over 60%, because if it was over 60%, it would be red. Or sorry, if it was over 62%, it would be red. So the good thing is they have nothing red right now. They have a couple of alarms over here in red that's telling them that something went wrong. Like that one got way too dry. This one got way too hot. Yeah, and so that's, and you can see the CO2 on them. So that one's, sometimes you'll see some that their CO2 is really high. So they know, we find that if the CO2 goes over 1,000 for too long, it'll get off notes. So we try and burp the CO2 at 1,000 ppm.
And CO2 is not the necessarily the cause of a problem. I think CO2 naturally inhibits molds and such, but it's the other gases like ethylene and
Correct.
That can play a role in making a negative impact. Correct?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Well, to be, hold on, let me be clear. We don't know for sure. Like we think we know. We're trying to prove it, but we do know that when CO2 spikes, ethylene also climbs. Some other gas that climb as well. So that's when you ask us what's coming down the road. That will be one of the things. How do we measure these other gases accurately and predict things like? Well, there's a way. I don't want to share everything we're doing because people like to copy what we do. So, but one of the things is measuring. Actually, I don't want to say this. I can't say it. Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll keep the secret sauce.
Yeah. For now.
So much for rising tides raise all ships, Jay.
Well,
I'm joking. I'm joking. I'm joking. I'm joking.
I'm going to tell you. There's a way we can measure. There's a way we can measure VOCs. So if you're starting to get this funk smell, we would know that there's things that are happening there that need to stop right away. That you need to expose it to more air quickly. There's even ways we can measure the terpenes. So how are your terpenes climbing up or going down through this process? If they start dropping fast, then you should probably do something about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. So when the gas releases from the CurePak or the container, it has a smell.
Well, you'll just smell the terpenes of the flower only. You're not going to smell, like CO2 doesn't have a smell. Yeah, there is no smell other than the flower. Yeah, you're not going to smell anything.
But it's going to smell like weed. Can you make a really small carbon filter?
We could potentially, yeah. Yeah, I guess if it's in your house, I don't know.
Yeah.
This is most of our stuff is made, like we design things for commercial use. Like it's like we love home growers. We want to help them as much as we can, but we don't design things cheaply. We design things for commercial use. So typically a facility will have odor control.
Can you demo how to detach the CurePak?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm going to show you on this one. So what we do, there's two ways. This is it's a threaded port.
This is your preferred method, correct?
I like this the best because it's easiest to install it. So it's literally just threaded into that port in the barrel. It's got threads on here and it threads in.
Yeah.
The other way of doing it is you do it in a tote like this, and you drill a hole, so a 2.5-inch hole. I know we're Canadian, but we usually talk in imperial for everything. And so you drill a hole, and there's this nut on this far side of it. Let's see if I can get this to work here.
And it threads on and locks in.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
That's it. So you just have a hole in the front, and this sticks through. And these are those trays I was telling you about some home growers will use so you can put different genetics inside of the same bin.
Where do they sell those trays?
They're Amazon. I think on one of our videos we share exactly where to get them and how much they cost, and they're like
Okay.
$20.
What is defined as a long cure?
So drying is a whole thing where people can argue on what the best way of drying is. There's people that are saying, well, I know for sure that if you dry too fast, it's not good. So let's just say you dry for 10 days. You could do it sooner, but let's just say 10 days is the amount of time you dry for. Mm-hmm. Then after that, and it also depends on if you're on the stalk or off the stalk. If you're on the stalk, the plant will give off CO2 for up to weeks after. 3 weeks is probably a safe time to stop if you're on the stalk, 2 to 3 weeks. If you're off the stalk, if it's just bucked flower and it's been trimmed, then usually 10 days, you'll start seeing the gas stop and everything will be stable. So it's like a total of like 20 days to 30 days. Back in the day, we used to dry in like 6 days and bag it and be gone. But like our quality was terrible.
Do you remember how wet the shit was?
Yeah, it wasn't good.
It was incredible.
But we had a lot of it.
Yeah. Old school BC Bud days. I mean, those were really looking back now. Is there a maximum capacity that the container could be?
Yeah, we recommend 35 gallons, but I don't know what the liters of that is, but 35 gallons is what we recommend. People like to go way more overkill. We have lots of customers in the US who are using 55-gallon drums. The only challenge when you use a drum that big is if you have too much moisture in there, it can cause you problems, but the CurePak will alert you. So it connects to an app. So let's just say you loaded too much wet flour into a drum and the CurePak can't get that moisture out. It's trying to pull it out and the moisture exceeds 0.62 water activity. It will alert you on your phone saying, hey, the room is too, or the chamber's too wet. Come do something. Like you have to come and help. And so then you'd go there, you'd open the barrel up and you'd probably pull all that flour out, put onto a rack or something, or put it into a really dry room or fluff it, or just get more air exchange faster. And so there is safety mechanisms for that. But these drums behind me, those are 35 gallon. So there's a 30 gallon and a 35 gallon. The only thing the difference between a 30 and a 35 is they're a little bit taller. So if you're going to go with these, just go with 35. The same as those blue barrels, those are also roughly 35 gallons. So.
And you're filling about, what, 80% capacity?
Yeah, 75, 80%. Yeah. So so it's like you want to make sure. Another thing we used to recommend putting the puck in the middle of the barrel, but that's bad because it's usually inside the flower. So you'll fill the flower up to here. The sensors will be above the flower. This is the headspace where you're going to measure the air in there, and everything's good. This will hold about 7 to 8 pounds, depending on the density of the flower. So we don't really like recommending how much it'll hold, only because the density of the flower makes a really big difference.
It varies. How often do the pucks need to be calibrated, if they need to be at all?
So yeah, there's two main things you need to calibrate, or two main sensors in the CO2, which you can calibrate yourself. We recommend doing every 6 months, but if you're using the puck heavily, you're exposing it to a lot of different environmental conditions, you should calibrate it probably monthly. So basically take the puck outside into ambient air, away from all cars, forklifts, anything that's giving off CO2, and like basically a 400 to 400 ppm environment. You just push the calibrate button and it zeroes it at that environment. The temperature and humidity sensors, there's no calibration on them. They come calibrated from us. You can replace them if you want. They're replaceable. We recommend replacing them every year just to be safe, but the drift on them is like 0.01% per 5 years. Like the drift on them is so low that you shouldn't have to replace them. But just because we want people to have a good experience, we just recommend placing them once a year. and they're fairly inexpensive.
Fantastic. And just really quickly, everybody that's on here, because we are a community, please, anyone that asks a question, just follow them. Just follow each other, and we can all be a better source of information for each other. Can you cure if you haven't dried off thoroughly enough first?
You can. You just have to make sure you remove the moisture. Like the biggest thing is don't let the moisture in that environment sit above 62%. So if you can ensure that moisture gets pulled out of there and stays below 62%, you'll be okay. I think 62% is actually a little bit high. You want to aim for 60 if you can. But the final target is 58, right? So if you put your flower in there, and like a really good way of doing this, a good test for people when you first learn, is you dry your flower, throw your flower into a barrel like this or a chamber, put the CurePak on it, let it sit for 24 hours. Don't touch it, and see what the moisture stabilizes at in that chamber. Try and do this at room temperature, so like 70 to 73. I always use Fahrenheit because Fahrenheit I feel has more resolution than Celsius because you're not doing decimals.
Agreed.
And so you load the flower into that chamber, you let it sit for 24 hours. The air in the flower is going to equalize. You're going to have a number. It's going to give you an RH number. The RH, let's just say it's 62. Great. Now you're just going to burp that air off for the next few days or next week or two until you get it down to 58, right? Let's say it stabilizes at 65. Okay, well, that's not great. The flower is really wet. You might be able to pull enough moisture out through the curing process. If it's a small chamber, the pup will be able to exchange it quite quickly. If you have a dry enough environment, like another thing is the environment that you're in is important. So you want to have the environment that you're in slightly lower than your target. So like a perfect environment would be like 55% RH. If you can maintain 55, that's great. As long as even if it's 40, that's fine too. It's just going to do quicker burps. It's going to let less dry air in. Yeah, less dry air in. And so the other thing you do is now that your flower's sitting there, it's 65, like as an example, you're going to try and burp that off. If you can maintain the moisture, if you can bring the moisture down through burping, great. If you can't, then you have to take that flower out and you have to dry it more. Because if it sits above 0.62 for any long period, like I'd say 12 hours or more, you'll start getting these funky smells. And
you run the risk of molds.
Yeah, you're not going to notice it right away, but eventually, like someone with a keen nose will notice it.
Which gas is most crucial to release in the curing process?
I think it's tough. We don't really know for sure. Like we know the CO2. If the CO2 sits high, it causes problems. But we also think that's because it's other gases that are also high. Like we measured ammonia. Ammonia is not a good gas in there at all. Like because usually it's just too wet. It gives you kind of like that cat pee smell. You can get sometimes. But ethylene also is. We measure ethylene at like 5 parts per million, kind of the highest. So it's not a lot. But you don't need a lot of ethylene. Like, so they use ethylene to ripen fruit, right? So I'm sure you've seen this, if you put bananas and apples together, you can ripen fruit faster. When they ship blueberries from, say, Argentina somewhere, or maybe blueberries aren't the best example, but there's fruit that they'll ship from another country, then they'll get it here, then they'll charge it with ethylene and make it ripen really fast. And so we don't know. Someone out there might know. If they know, we'd love to chat with them. But how ethylene affects the ripening of cannabis?
I mean, it's designed for like you alluded to a fruit, but you can also trigger cannabis to go into flower using ethylene gas.
Yeah, I've seen that as well, or I've heard of that.
What's in the Gen 2 that's not in the Gen 1?
Gen 2 has VPD control, so that tighter control. It also has a hydrate mode. So if your flower is over dried, you can put it in on high. It'll do this automatically. It'll pull moisture from the air, so you just have to make sure your environment. Let's just say you dried your flower down to 52%, and it's a little bit crispy, and you could use a moisture pack, or you could just put a CurePak on the chamber and increase the humidity in your room a little bit. You could put a bucket of water in there or whatever, and then it's going to slowly introduce that moisture back into the chamber at a really controlled rate. It's just like really precise. So if you want to stop it at 56. You'll just slowly inject moisture in there until it gets to 56. Hydrate mode, VPD control, and then another one is RH control. So you can literally target an RH number. The Gen 1 is a little bit more like based on highs and lows, and you're trying to like kind of float in its range, whereas the Gen 2 is a lot more straight.
How long do these units live, and what maintenance is there?
So they have a 1-year warranty. We're moving to a 2-year warranty because we have a lot of confidence now in them. The Gen 2 also has new circuitry, so it's all solid state. So there's no real mechanical parts inside there anymore. The pump is designed to run for years. So I think we've eliminated a lot of things that could cause failures. We get very few returned because of failure. Most of the returns we get is something that happened either in shipping or maybe a manufacturing defect. And usually if something's going to go wrong, it happens in the first 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks. And then after that, like we rarely have issues with them. So as far as maintenance, just cleaning it, we have videos online, like really good videos on how to clean it, replacing sensors if you have to, but really just you basically blow it out with compressed air. You take the hose and the diffusers and you can soak those in ISO, blow those off. So it's pretty straightforward. And it also depends on like what kind of environment you're in. Like we have CurePaks in GMP or EU GMP facilities, which is like super stringent, really strict, and that's a very hard environment to be in. And so we have protocols for that. And then obviously if you're at home, then it can be much simpler.
Doesn't HPLC testing give the most accurate testing for terps?
Yeah, there's gas
liquid gas chromatography.
That's the one. So there's other ways of doing it. Like the fragrance industry, for instance, has some really impressive ways of measuring smells. The thing that I think is better, honestly, this is going to sound crazy to some people, that's better than some of these instruments is actually people's noses. Like there's industries where you have people that actually sit there, they're expert smellers, right? It's their olfactory, I think. I don't know how you say it, but olfactory.
No, you're entirely right.
What's that?
You're entirely right. There's certain wine tasters and experts that are able to pick up the craziest. I would agree with you. The nose knows.
Yeah, and so like there's in certain industry, other industries, you have these companies you can go and send your product to. You know, the panel of people who will smell it and they'll write down it's got cherry, it's got this, it's got that, and it's got sulfurs, it's got diesel, it's got whatever. And so I think that has more potential in the future. For like, I think someone should start this company, to be honest, that has like a bunch of expert cannabis smellers, and they just give you like a report on what's in it, versus like these lab tests that I think don't grab everything, and I think they miss some of the important smells that are in there, the things that matter to humans.
I mean, listen, I'm going to start that company. If I'm looking for employees, anyone want to come smell my weed? How do I clean the puck between uses? What do I need to do?
Yeah, just blow it off with compressed air, use ISO, wipe it down. You can take the hose and the diffuser, soak them in ISO, blow them off. You're good.
Is the CurePak app controllable from a phone?
Yeah, Android, iOS. It's really slick. It works really good. There's really good data in it. You can literally turn a puck on from another country. You can monitor all the graphs. You can change all the settings. You can do everything you want to do on the screen on the CurePak from the app. You can actually find it. So on this wall of CurePaks here, there's a part of the app where you hit Find My Puck, and it'll literally flash the puck that is the one that you're looking at, so you can go and find that one really easily. And then there's also the web app, which is even better. So on your laptop, you go and open the web app, and it'll give you really detailed graphs. So you might want to see like, hey, over the last 3 days, like what happened, why did this flower not turn out like the last one? And then you might see, like we've seen this before, where we had flower in our one room here, and it was in a gym actually, or another room we were curing in, and we had these really funky results. We found that the cleaners came twice, and they mopped the floor, and this totally spiked the RH in the room, and it messed up our cure. And we couldn't figure out. We were to look at the graph and see the cleaning schedule and realize, oh, that's what happened. So the graphs are useful for a lot of things. Not everyone needs them, but you'll learn a lot from them if you get into it.
And it's a question. I mean, it's a good question. Is there a monthly fee for this app?
No.
That's important.
We're actually looking at launching a cheaper version of the CurePak. We had it's called the CurePak Stash. It has no screen on it. That would be fully app controlled. And so some people have commented that the price is high in the CurePak, and I guess you could argue it is. I think for a commercial producer, it's not. It's actually quite cheap. But if you're a home grower, I can see where that's a challenge. So we're looking at launching basically a service model where you pay like $14 a month for the CurePak. So it would really reduce down the price for people who don't want to spend the money up front. Not really sure how we do that yet, but it's something that we've been playing with.
Okay. What about power outages?
So it's got a battery in it. So that's why we put a battery in it, because we've had experience where power went out and like a burp is pretty critical. Like if the RH is too high, if you're in that 62 range. And so it'll give you one good solid burp on a power outage. So, and then it's also, that's why we have, if you want to move the barrels around, it'll stay on for a while. Like if you're going to move it around the facility or whatever, at least you can see what's happening on it.
Question is, how many grams can you do without harming the results? And I mean, we kind of alluded to that earlier on with the size of the container. Some people are using 50-gallon containers, and you might get away with it, but the recommendation was a 35-gallon is kind of the sweet spot.
A mistake people make is they'll use a barrel like this, and they'll put like half a pound in it, right? Well, that's just too much headspace for that amount of flour. Mm-hmm. And so if you put too much dry air in there, it's going to dry the flower out too fast. So ideally you need, that's why we say fill the chamber at least 50% full. If you're at 50% full, then you can at least manage that headspace better. You can get better push and pull from the environment.
Makes total sense. This is a ChatGPT question. Is there any evidence for increased cannabinoids and terpene stability while using CurePak compared to passive curing? Do the CurePaks merely standardize the process or improve the outcome?
Yeah, so people have asked us about this quite a bit. I haven't seen any improvement in cannabinoids, nothing that we can measure. There's a lot of theories and folklore that, yeah, you'll get better potency. I've certainly seen different smell profiles from it. None that we could measure through testing, but you could definitely measure through your senses, through your nose. And so that's why I think there's this opportunity to have this panel of people, this company you can send flower to and actually verify there's a difference. And so yeah, I can't say for sure there's a potency increase, definitely a smell change. And then as far as standardizing the process, or especially standardizing the moisture levels of the water activity, I think is very, very beneficial.
I was just messing with you, Tia.
Oh, Tia, is that who that's got? Oh yeah.
Not ChatGPT.
Yeah, she is ChatGPT, so.
Hey guys, I really appreciate Jay joining us today, being such a wealth of knowledge, and I hope you all have a fantastic day. Wonderful. So thanks for tuning in, guys. Happy growing, and lots more to come. Thanks.
Thanks for having me.
Cheers, Jay. Bye.
Yeah.